Hey everyone, welcome back for another deep dive. Today we're taking a closer look at Blake Lively.
The one and only.
Yeah, she's known for some pretty iconic roles,
Yeah.
right? Like Serena van der Woodsen in Gossip Girl,
Right.
and she's got that seemingly perfect life with Ryan Reynolds.
Yeah.
But we're going a little deeper today.
Sounds good.
We're going beyond like the glossy magazine covers. I've got some articles here. You send over some notes, and let me tell you, there's a lot to unpack here. Alleged feuds, tension on set, and a whole lot of questions about how those picture-perfect relationships actually play out in Hollywood.
You know, it's fascinating, right? Because Blake Lively, she has this public persona, and then all these stories emerge from behind the scenes. It really makes you think about the difference between image and reality,
Yep.
especially in an industry that really depends on these carefully crafted narratives.
Yeah. It's like trying to solve a puzzle, but you only have half the pieces.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's start with her early career,
Okay.
back in the Gossip Girl days.
Yeah.
You know the show where she played Serena, the like it girl of the Upper East Side?
Yes.
Best friends with Blair Waldorf? Well, the reality of that friendship seems a little more complicated.
A little bit, yeah. There's been like a buzz, right, about a feud between Lively and Leighton Meister for years.
Really?
Years and years. Reports say that they weren't really friends, that they clashed on set. Some people even say the crew had to pick sides.
Oh, wow. So it's like high school drama,
Totally.
but with like a designer wardrobe budget.
Exactly.
Some sources even say that the competition, like for screen time and just resources in general, might have added to the tension.
Sure.
I mean, they were both young actresses trying to kind of like make their mark.
Of course. And the show's producer, Joshua Safran, he's even confirmed that they weren't close. He attributed it to their different personalities. He says that they were friendly, but the fact that he even addressed it, right?
Yeah.
That kind of says something.
And then there's that awkward clip where Lively calls Meester Monkey Jesus as a joke. Yeah, that was a weird one.
That was going on behind the scenes to prompt that kind of comment.
Who knows? It adds fuel to the fire, you know? Especially when you consider that their characters were like the definition of female friendship on screen.
Right, right.
So that clash between what we see and what's really happening it's so interesting.
Totally. Okay, now buckle up because it's about to get even juicier when we bring Scarlett Johansson into the picture.
Ooh,
So
okay.
while we're talking Ryan Reynolds' ex-wife here, you remember that whole timeline overlap?
I do, yes.
So Lively and Reynolds, they met on the set of Green Lantern. This was back in 2010,
Uh-huh.
while Reynolds was still married to Johansson.
Yeah.
Now, they insist that they were just friends for 2 years
Okay.
and only started dating after their respective breakups. But some people question that narrative.
I mean, yeah, it's a little suspicious.
Right.
The timing.
Timing.
Yeah.
Then there's this pretty infamous double date story
Right.
where Lively and Reynolds, they were supposedly with other people,
Right.
but their chemistry was just like undeniable.
Yeah.
Makes you wonder if those just friends boundaries were really as clear as they claimed.
I mean, were they really just friends? You know?
Right, right. And then you've got sources close to Johansson who say she felt betrayed by Lively,
Oh, wow.
believing that she kind of like stole Reynolds from her.
It's a lot of drama to add to an already complicated situation.
Totally, totally. And to add fuel to the fire, there were reports that Lively actually tried to get a role that was originally meant for Johansson.
Oh, really?
She didn't get the part, but she allegedly ended up with Reynolds. So it makes you think about like the potential for rivalry there, even if it was subconscious.
It's a very classic Hollywood love triangle.
It is.
Made even more dramatic because all three of them were like at the top of their game.
Totally.
So it makes you think about ambition, right? And power dynamics and how all of that can affect personal relationships.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Speaking of complicated relationships, let's talk about Lively's dynamic with Anna Kendrick,
Okay.
her co-star in A Simple Favor. This one's like shrouded in rumors of animosity during filming.
Right.
Separate press tours, icy interactions,
Yeah.
the whole 9 yards.
It's so interesting, right? Because their characters on screen are supposed to be close friends,
Right.
which adds like another layer of contrast between the public image and what was allegedly happening behind the scenes.
Totally. And remember those interviews?
Yes.
When Kendrick joked about like hating Lively?
Yes.
Or that time she like told Lively not to touch her?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that's not exactly standard co-star behavior.
Really. Even if those comments were meant to be jokes, you can kind of tell by their body language
Yeah.
that there's something else going on there.
Right.
It's like they're forcing themselves to be pleasant, but there's something deeper underneath.
Totally. Totally.
Yeah.
And the irony is they actually filmed a sequel to A Simple Favor.
They did.
So they either reconciled or they're both incredible professionals. It's a puzzle we may never solve.
Exactly. And it just highlights how difficult it can be, right?
Yeah.
To navigate personal relationships in Hollywood, especially when your career depends on getting along with people you might not actually like.
Exactly. Exactly. Before we jump into some other interesting encounters and alleged feuds, I want to hear from you guys.
Yeah.
What are you thinking so far? Are you surprised by any of this? Or does it kind of confirm something you already suspected about Blake Lively?
It really is amazing, though, how these behind the scenes stories can change how we see celebrities. It reminds us that there's more to it than just what we see on screen or in the magazines,
Oh, for sure. It's like peeling back the layers of an onion. And speaking of layers, there are a few more encounters we need to talk about, like some of those alleged feuds and tense moments that hint at maybe a different side to Blake Lively.
Right. One that comes to mind is that reported clash she had with Martha Stewart.
Oh,
Remember Lively's lifestyle website, Preserve?
oh yeah, Preserve. I remember that.
Short-lived, yeah.
Yeah, it was.
Well, Martha Stewart, the queen of all things domestic, she had some pretty pointed things to say about Lively's ventures.
Well, this is one I remember. It wasn't just like a casual critique. Stewart seemed to really take a jab at Lively's authenticity. What did she say exactly?
Basically, she implied that Lively should just, stick to acting, that she wasn't really cut out for the lifestyle world. She even said something about Lively's website being a little bit too, should I say it, precious.
Ooh, that's harsh. Especially coming from Martha Stewart. It makes you wonder if there was some professional rivalry going on there.
It's possible. I mean, they were both in the lifestyle space, right? Even though they had very different approaches, Stewart, she built her empire on being, an expert, having that no-nonsense attitude. Lively's brand was more about, aspirational aesthetics. Maybe Stewart saw Lively as a threat. Or maybe she genuinely thought the website lacked substance.
Yeah, either way, it kind of adds to this whole narrative of Lively being a bit more, assertive and maybe even competitive than her public image would suggest.
I see what you're saying, yeah. Then there's that alleged tension with Armie Hammer on the set of Gossip Girl. Hammer actually said that he left the show early because the environment was so difficult. He never named names, but some people think Lively might have been part of that tension.
Interesting. So Gossip Girl wasn't all champagne and Upper East Side glamour behind the scenes. Do we know, specifically what might have caused this difficult environment?
Not really. The details are kind of murky, but Hammer said the atmosphere was toxic. He hinted at, power struggles and personality clashes. Given Lively's history with Meester and the rumors about her behavior on set, it's not a stretch to think she was involved in some way.
Right, right. It's starting to paint a picture of a pretty demanding, maybe even challenging work environment. And it brings us back to this theme of Lively's on-set interactions being a bit more complex than her public image lets on.
Exactly. It's like when you look at a tapestry from the back, you see all the knots and the loose threads that are holding the beautiful image together.
Yeah, I like that. Okay, let's fast forward to a more recent feud. The one with Justin Baldoni, the director of It Ends With Us.
Oh, yeah. That one's a mess.
It is a mess.
With all the rumors about creative differences, Ryan Reynolds getting involved, and all the shade thrown at public events.
So much shade.
So much.
It's interesting because this one involves her husband, so it really blurs those lines between her personal life and her professional life. It seems like Lively, being the star and a producer on It Ends With Us, had a very specific vision for the film. And the reports say that she brought Reynolds in to help her with that vision, even though he wasn't officially part of the project.
Right. So, Ryan Reynolds was secretly contributing to the film? That's interesting.
It is. It is. What exactly was he doing?
People say he had a lot of input on the dialogue, especially for this really important rooftop scene. Lively has said before that she and Reynolds, collaborate on each other's projects. But this level of, behind-the-scenes influence probably didn't sit well with everyone.
Yeah, especially not with the director, Justin Baldoni. It's his film, right?
Did he ever say anything about Reynolds being involved? Or, express any frustration with how Lively was approaching things? Not publicly, but there were signs of tension. He skipped a lot of the press events they were supposed to do together, and fans noticed there weren't any pictures of him with Lively at the New York premiere.
And then there was a moment at the premiere, right?
Yes. During his speech.
During his speech, he made a point of saying that the night was for all the women, and he mentioned Lively and Colleen Suver, the author, but he didn't mention Reynolds at all. A lot of people thought that was a deliberate snub.
It definitely added fuel to the fire, intentional or not. It really said something about the power dynamics at play.
Totally. So we have Lively, using her influence as the star and a producer, bringing her husband into the mix, and maybe even sidelining the director a little bit. It's a power move.
It is. It really challenges that image of Lively being just this, like, charming, agreeable actress.
Yeah, for sure.
It shows a more strategic side, someone who's willing to use her power to get what she wants.
Yeah, he's giving, like, boss lady vibes, but maybe with a little bit of an edge.
Maybe a little bit, yeah.
Hmm.
And to make things even more interesting, Baldoni just announced that he's not directing the sequel, It Starts With Us.
Oh, wow.
That's a huge decision.
It is a huge decision.
It suggests that those creative differences and personal conflicts were pretty serious.
Yeah, it's a bold move for him. I mean, he's risking his involvement in a potentially really successful franchise.
He is.
But it's also sending a message. He wasn't okay with compromising his vision or being in a situation where he felt like he didn't have control.
Exactly. It's such a fascinating look at how power works in Hollywood. You have this successful actress. She's using her star power and her producer credits. Her husband is there to support her and offer his expertise. And then you have the director who's trying to hold on to control of his own project.
Yeah, it makes you think about who really has the power in these situations.
Yeah.
And what does this all mean for Blake Lively's career and her public image? Is this like a turning point where the America's sweetheart thing fades away and she becomes this more assertive, maybe even polarizing figure?
That's a good question. It's clear that she's a force to be reckoned with, on screen and off. And as her career goes on, it'll be interesting to see how these dynamics play out in her future projects and relationships.
Okay, before we move on to Lively's dating history before she was with Reynolds, and talk about some times when people might have thrown some subtle shade her way, I want to get your take on everything we've talked about so far. What stands out to you? Are you surprised by any of this, or does it confirm something you already kind of felt about Blake Lively?
It's crazy how much you can learn from, like, a carefully worded comment or a missing photo op. You know, it really shows you the power dynamics in Hollywood. Like, everyone's playing the strategic game of chess on screen and off.
Oh, absolutely. And when we look back at Blake Lively's dating history before Reynolds, we can see those same dynamics playing out in her personal life. One relationship that always comes up is her romance with Leonardo DiCaprio. It was brief, but it made headlines. Right, the DiCaprio era. This is when Gossip Girl was super popular. They seemed like, young Hollywood royalty. Mm-hmm. But there was also that age gap and DiCaprio's reputation for, like, dating younger models.
Yeah. It's interesting how that relationship, even though it was short, still fascinates people. There's this element of mystery to it, partly because of the way they supposedly communicated through pictures of dolls.
Wait, what? Pictures of dolls? That's a new one. What's the story there?
The details are kind of vague, but some reports said that Lively and DiCaprio would send each other pictures of dolls, maybe as a way to, like, express their feelings or share inside jokes. Some people think it was a way to keep things private in a very public relationship.
Definitely unconventional. It makes you wonder if they were trying to create this, like, air of mystery around their romance. What was the official reason they broke up?
Rumors say that DiCaprio was ready to settle down, but Lively, she was in her early 20s and not looking for anything serious. Apparently, it was all just too much too quickly for her.
That's such a classic Hollywood story. Two people at different points in their lives, their paths crossing for a short, intense time, and then they go their separate ways. But the DiCaprio story doesn't end there. Remember that anecdote about them running into each other at an event and Ryan Reynolds supposedly got jealous?
Oh, yeah, there might have been some lingering energy between Lively and DiCaprio even after they broke up. And Reynolds, being, aware of his wife's past relationships, probably picked up on that, which led to some tension between the two men.
It's like a real-life Hollywood drama. Past romances and unspoken rivalries casting a shadow on the present. I wonder if Reynolds ever felt, like, insecure about Lively's history with DiCaprio.
It's definitely possible. Even the most confident people can get a little jealous when they think about their partner's past loves, especially someone as famous as Leonardo DiCaprio.
It just shows how complicated relationships are, how past experiences can affect us and make us feel insecure, even in seemingly perfect relationships. Okay, let's move on to some more recent encounters where Lively might have been on the receiving end of some subtle shade. You know, those moments where what's not said speaks volumes, like that alleged interaction with Zendaya at a Michael Kors fashion show.
Oh, the fashion show showdown. Body language experts had a field day with that one. They said that Zendaya's posture, her facial expressions, even the way she was looking, all suggested she was throwing shade at Lively and Emily Blunt, who were also there.
So it's all about those subtle cues, the things that tell you what's really going on beneath the surface. What did Zendaya do that caused all this speculation?
It was a bunch of things. Experts pointed to her, like distant demeanor, the fact that she didn't really interact with Lively or Blunt, and how she seemed to position herself away from them. It was as if she was creating this, like, subtle distance, physically and emotionally.
It's like high school, but with designer clothes and front row seats. How did Emily Blunt react to this alleged shade? Did she pick up on what was happening?
Body language experts think she might have. They noticed that her posture was a little tense, and there was this quick expression on her face that could be interpreted as, like, annoyance or discomfort. It's like she felt that shift in energy and reacted to it.
It's amazing how much can be said without saying a word. It's like a secret language. Did Zendaya ever address all the speculation about her behavior?
She did. She went on Twitter and denied throwing any shade, saying that she was just focused on the runway. But of course, that hasn't stopped people from speculating.
Of course not. In the world of celebrities, perception is everything. And sometimes those unspoken messages are more powerful than any carefully written statement. Speaking of unspoken messages, there's that comment from Brendan Slanar, Lively's co-star in It Ends With Us. It was playful, but also maybe a little pointed.
Yeah, that comment definitely got people talking. When someone asked him what made it easy for him to fall in love with Lively's character on set, he hesitated and then joked that he couldn't really say.
Ooh, I sense a story here. Did Lively press him to explain? What did he say that made people think he was throwing shade?
Lively, being her playful self, encouraged him to explain why he hesitated. And then Sklanar said that he preferred rehearsing with a mirror than with her. He said it in a light-hearted way, but some people took it as a subtle dig at Lively's acting skills, or maybe her on-set behavior.
It's one of those comments that could be taken in a few different ways. Was he really joking, or was there some truth to what he said? We'll probably never know for sure, but it's those little ambiguities that make these interactions so interesting.
Exactly. It's all about reading between the lines and understanding the context. In a world where image is everything, those off-the-cuff comments can reveal more than intended.
Okay, so we've talked about Lively's alleged feuds, her complicated history with Scarlett Johansson and the Ryan Reynolds connection, and even those subtle moments of shade.
Yeah.
What's the big takeaway here? What does all of this tell us about Blake Lively?
I think it shows us that she is someone who's more complex than her public image might suggest. We see her ambition, her strong sense of self, and her willingness to use her influence, even if it means ruffling some feathers.
It's like we peeled back a layer and seen a more strategic, maybe even calculating side to her.
Right. It reminds us that even though celebrities are in the public eye, they're still individuals with their own complexities and motivations. And as we've seen with Blake Lively, those complexities can lead to some fascinating and sometimes messy dynamics in their relationships.
Well, that brings us to the end of our deep dive into the world of Blake Lively. We've explored the good and the bad, the alleged feuds and the subtle shade, and we've seen a side of her that's both intriguing and, I'd say, a bit more human than the picture-perfect image we're used to seeing.
It's been a fascinating journey, and as always, we encourage you to keep exploring, to question the stories we're told, and to come to your own conclusions about the people behind those carefully crafted personas.
Because ultimately, that's what makes these deep dives so interesting. We're not here to judge, we're here to understand. Thanks for joining us.